Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really try to get behind the headlines, look at the sources, and give you the insights you need on some pretty profound topics. And we know you, our listener, you're looking for that deeper understanding, something that really shifts how you see things. We've been going through these 14 steps to joyful living, and today, well, we're hitting some really crucial mind expanding ones. So, our mission today is to briefly touch on steps 7 and 8, but then really dive deep into step 9, expansion meditation. This is where we see how, ancient Vedic wisdom and the practice of karma yoga actually paved the way for developing this incredibly expansive mindset, feeling truly connected, a sense of oneness. Think of this as maybe a shortcut to grasping some deep spiritual ideas and seeing how they actually apply practically to living a more joyful life day to day.
Exactly. And these steps, 7, 8, and especially 9, they're so critical if you're looking for more than just, say, surface level happiness techniques. What we're going to talk about today, it might genuinely challenge how you think about yourself, your purpose. It really opens the door to a much more profound sense of well-being.
Okay, great. So let's start with that quick look at step 7, inputs from the Vedas. We've talked about relaxation, concentration, meditation before. What's different here? Why are these ancient texts suddenly so important?
Well, the key difference is the guidance. Basic meditation, like relaxation or concentration, can bring benefits, even certain, let's call them powers, as the texts sometimes do, even if you don't have a strong spiritual foundation. But without wisdom, those powers could actually be harmful. The Vedas provide Dharma, this essential knowledge of how to live rightly, what to do, why do it. It covers righteous conduct, Dharma, and its opposite, adharma. This knowledge is vital for refining the mind further, making sure progress is genuinely beneficial.
Okay, and the texts mention practicing Dharma strengthens something called our aura element and connects this to accumulated knowledge. How does that connection actually work?
Right. So the idea is we all carry accumulations from, well, potentially many past lives, preferences, impressions, and crucially, knowledge. Impressions kind of shape our environment, our body. Preferences fuel our desires. But it's the knowledge part that determines our willpower. And here's a really interesting bit. When this accumulated knowledge, which gets refined by practicing Dharma, hits a certain point, a critical level, it gains real power. Someone might have a strong preference, say, for smoking. But if their knowledge base becomes strong enough, convicted enough, that habit can just drop away, almost like magic, even if the underlying preference is still there initially.
Wow.
Yeah, it explains why sometimes people know what's good or bad, but they struggle to act accordingly. Their knowledge hasn't reached that critical mass, that point of real conviction yet.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like the knowledge becomes a shield. I think the text uses an analogy, something about a lamp flame, wind, and a glass cover. What does that tell us about making choices?
Ah, yes, that's a really powerful image. Think of the flame as your mind, constantly flickering. The wind represents all your desires pulling you towards external things. And the glass cover, that's your knowledge, your conviction, built through understanding Dharma.
Hmm.
Without that cover, the flame gets blown about by every gust of desire. But with true knowledge, the glass cover, the mind stays steady. So in daily life, when faced with choices, especially ethical ones, this higher knowledge lets you act from conviction, not just react to temptation or material gain.
Like the example of the government officer and bribes.
Exactly. The text points out that without that deep spiritual understanding of Dharma's link to real joyful living, someone's values might be, well, relative. They might refuse a small bribe but give in to a huge one. But when that higher knowledge is firm, Dharma becomes non-negotiable. This whole process of strengthening yourself through knowledge, it naturally leads into the next required step.
Which brings us right to step 8, practicing karma yoga. This sounds like it really changes how we approach everything we do.
It absolutely does. And it's considered a necessary practice before you can really succeed with the more advanced meditations like expansion meditation. Karma yoga, at its core, is about letting go of the sense of ownership over the results of your actions. You're still the one doing the action, the doer, but the outcome. You learn to see that as a gift from God or the universe, however you frame it.
So it's not about being passive.
Not at all. It's about detaching from the fruits of your actions. You shift from acting to change the world according to your desires, to acting as a dedication, accepting whatever environment or outcome arises as a gift. This builds a really deep conviction that there's no inherent lasting happiness in those external things or results. And that's key.
So what does it take to sort of complete karma yoga?
Two main things need to be firmly in place. First, that deep conviction that worldly objects, achievements, they don't hold the key to lasting happiness. Second, you need to develop a really strong, genuine desire to find the true source of happiness wherever that may lie. When those two are solid, you're considered ready to move beyond karma yoga, this active dharma, into deeper knowledge.
Right, it's like a preparation phase. The text has that interesting analogy about the deposed king raising an army. Why is it important not to just stay in karma yoga forever?
That's a great point. The analogy highlights that karma yoga is a tool, a means to an end, not the end itself. The king raises the army to regain his kingdom, his title. He doesn't plan to spend his whole life just recruiting soldiers. Similarly, karma yoga builds the inner strength, the detachment, the conviction needed to move forward towards true, joyful living, reclaiming our title, you could say. Staying stuck there is like training the army but never actually marching on the capital. It served its purpose, now it's time for the next stage.
And that next stage, the big one for today, is step 9, expansion meditation. So if concentration meditation was about focusing down onto one point, this sounds like the complete opposite, exploding outwards.
In a way, yes. It's a radical shift. Expansion meditation trains the mind, which you've already learned to focus through concentration meditation, to now expand systematically, to encompass, well, everything, the entire universe. There's a really beautiful, relatable analogy in the text about a woman becoming a mother.
Oh, yeah. How does that relate?
Well, think about it. Before having a child, a person's world often centers largely on themselves, their own needs and desires. But when a woman becomes a mother, her sense of self naturally, profoundly expands. Her baby becomes an extension of her. She feels its pains, its joys, almost as her own. She'll sacrifice her comfort without a second thought, right? Because the baby is part of her.
Right, that makes sense.
Expansion meditation, guided by the deep knowledge from Vedanta, allows us to cultivate that same feeling, but towards the entire universe, seeing it all as an inseparable extension of our own being.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge concept. How does someone actually do that? What's the practical procedure for this kind of meditation?
It is vast, but the procedure itself is quite structured, quite systematic. After settling the mind with relaxation meditation, you begin to consciously expand your field of awareness. You start with yourself, your own being. Then you expand to include your immediate family, feeling that connection, then your wider community, society, then your country, then the entire world, all beings on Earth. Then you keep going the solar system, the galaxy, and ultimately the entire universe.
And the key is?
The absolute key at each stage is not just to think about these levels, but to actively cultivate the feeling of inseparability, to see how you are not separate from your family, how your family isn't separate from society, and so on, all the way out. You're dissolving the boundaries in your mind. The intended outcome is this profound realization of the holistic nature of the universe, where the feeling of being a separate, isolated individual just fades away.
It reminds me of the other analogy you mentioned about the hand. We don't see our fingers as totally separate things, do we?
Exactly. That's another perfect way to grasp it. You don't think my index finger is independent from my thumb. They're all parts of one hand, which is part of one arm, part of one body. Expansion meditation fosters that same understanding on a cosmic scale. We see that individual people, animals, planets, stars, they aren't truly independent entities. Everyone and everything is fundamentally interconnected, part of one whole. You can arrive at this understanding intellectually, maybe scientifically seeing the shared origins in matter, or you can see it spiritually, as part of a divine consciousness. The path isn't as important as the destination.
And that destination is the feeling, right? That essential felt sense of oneness at the end of the meditation. It's not just an idea.
Absolutely. That direct experience, that feeling of unity and interconnectedness, that's the goal. It's transformative because it's not just intellectual agreement, it's a shift in your very perception of reality.
What an incredible arc we've covered today. We saw how getting that foundational knowledge, the Dharma from the Vedas, is step 1. It provides the why and the how. Then practicing karma yoga helps us put that knowledge into action, detaching from results, building that inner conviction. And all of that just perfectly sets the stage for this amazing practice of expansion meditation, moving outwards from self to family, society, world, universe, until you feel that profound connection to everything.
It really is a profound journey.
Yeah.
It fundamentally shifts your perspective from feeling like you may be an isolated individual navigating the world to realizing you're an intrinsic, inseparable part of this vast, interconnected whole. It changes the definition of you.
So for you listening, here's something to really sit with. If you could truly internalize that feeling that the entire universe is an extension of your own being, how would that change things? How might your daily choices shift, your relationships? How might your whole idea of what happiness even is be completely transformed? That's definitely something worth pondering.